It's the studio chat.
I love it.
All right, here we go. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the studio chat. I'm here with my buddy Colin. How are you today, Colin?
Doing all right. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm pretty all right. We brought you on today because we wanted to know a little bit more about yourself and what brought you into the music world. So why don't you start off by telling me about yourself and where you're from and what you're doing with music?
Yeah, no, definitely. My name's Colin. I'm currently living here in the Ypsilanti area, but I grew up in this really small podunk farm town, about 2,000 people, called Potterville, about 15-20 minutes or so southwest of Lansing. And yeah, it's tricky. There's just like nothing to do there, so like music was definitely something that I felt like really kept me from going absolutely insane. Kind of growing up in a really small town where there was just like, nothing but farmland and cows and like no other crazy people.
And what did your music passion look like from that age? Were you just listening to a lot of music? Were you trying to sing or perform at the time? Any instruments? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't really start performing on instruments really until I came into middle school, when we sort of all received like the same musical education like throughout elementary school, and then once sixth grade rolled around, we kind of saw a divergence of people, if you will. Some people chose the music path, and other people chose the athletic path. I chose band, and I chose the music path, and I had never really like played a whole lot of instruments up to that point. Growing up, I feel like music was definitely something that would have been encouraged in my household. My mom was a really good singer. She got a vocal scholarship to Eastern, and she did a lot of Eastern Michigan. She did a lot of vocal work, a lot of singing. I can always remember her singing to me when I was a kid. Yeah, and I just remember growing up listening to the radio a whole lot, listening to all kinds of different like 80s, and growing up in like the 90s and 2000s. A lot of the music that came around that time that still I feel like is nostalgic for me. Then having my parents have their own separate interests as well. My dad was into a lot of new age, so I grew up listening to like Enya and stuff like that because my dad had a lot of her CDs. And yeah, and once the sixth grade came around, I decided I was not an athletic person, so I decided band was my career choice, my elective choice, so to speak. And I remember we took this sort of test before we kind of went into band, and I think that was also kind of a gauge of like who could go into band and who could go into like the gym classes. And I remember the test was about like telling if like pitches were different, it was rhythm related, stuff like that. And I just remember I scored really high on the test. So that was kind of my first sort of indication of like, hey, maybe music is actually like something I really like. So as sixth grade kind of rolled around, we did our instrument tryouts, and I'd never really played any instruments before, so I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to play. And at the time, this is kind of ironic, but at the time I didn't want to play percussion because I wanted something where you could actually play like notes and melodies. So I tried out for a few different instruments. I tried out for French horn, which I kind of liked, but I struggled a little bit with the brass intonation. I tried out for trombone, but the mouthpiece was way too big for my mouth at the time, and there was no way I could do that. And the instrument that I last tried out for that I ended up settling with was the alto saxophone. That was something that I felt like I could do really well. The embouchure of playing a woodwind instrument, and I liked the way it sounded, and I liked the way it felt, and I liked the way that it just produced the melodies, and it sort of kind of blended between the brass and the woodwind section, which was really great. So, yeah, I mean, at that point, it was just learning how to play the saxophone. My music teacher back in the day, Mr. Smith, shout out to him, great guy, and he was the one I think really sort of ignited all of our passions and sort of like got us down this road of like realizing like, hey, music is really great. And growing up in that small town and growing up in the school, I just felt like I wasn't like everybody else. I felt like band class was kind of like my home. People there actually understood me, and they were nerdy and they were geeky like I was, and I just, yeah, it was just something I really continued to stick with. It was great. I loved it. Ironically, at first, though, I really struggled with, we had this, like, requirement that we had to practice for so many hours a week, and I struggled with getting myself to practice because I just was, like, good at it, and I'm like, I don't even know how to practice. This is just, like, a slog for me. So...
So you mentioned something about not wanting to play percussion instruments, and we've done a little bit of recording here, and pretty much for every single recording that we have, you're playing on drums. So
I know.
Could you tell us about your journey into playing percussion, playing the drums, how that came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I basically progressed throughout marching band playing. I started on alto and tenor saxophone. I didn't really come across drums until, honestly, the beginning of the pandemic, and I just graduated college at that point, so I was, like, out of my college time, and I don't even really know, like, what kind of drew me into it, but I just kind of felt like on a whim, I was like... I remember we had done a little bit of, like, jamming out with Josh and some other guys, Hayden and some of the other guys I went to school with, and I had this, like, really kind of like a gag gift type thing, but it was like a really small, like, desktop drum kit, nothing fancy, but it was really just, like, something kind of stupid that I picked up, and I was playing on it a few times, and I'm like, this is actually kind of fun, and this is something that I, like, never really realized I would kind of want to get into, but, like, I think it would be cool. So during the pandemic, like everybody, I needed to find ways to try to keep myself busy indoors, and I kind of just decided, I was doing some research into electronic drum kits, and I kind of just decided on a whim to, like, pick up a Alesis Nitro Mesh, which was my first electronic kit, and just teach myself how to play. And as I kind of sat down and started, like, learning how to play, doing the absolute basics of, like, hi-hat and snare patterns and, like, 4 on the floor and stuff like that, I was like, this is actually something that I'm finding myself very good at. And I've always had a knack for rhythms. I mean, like I said, my mom was a vocalist, and my dad was always, he didn't do any sort of music training or anything like that, but he was always really good with rhythms. I think that's where I kind of inherited some of that at. And as I started doing more work on the electronic kit, I'm like, this is something I actually like. This is something, like, that actually I'm good at. So literally, I just sat down and I just kept, like, playing songs. I'd plug in my iPhone and I'd just, like, put on my Spotify playlist, and whatever came up is, whatever I would try to drum along to. And yeah, and it was just something I never really would have thought I would have stumbled on, because I don't have any sort of formal percussion training. I just kind of stumbled upon it, and I'm like, this is actually something I'm really good at. So
yeah, and that's it's come a long way since then from your Alesis Nitro kit. Mm-hmm. You've now done several records with a number of bands, not including but the Mike and the Ride, mm-hmm. Ben O'Ryan. If you remember, you did the drum part for My Doan's New Perfect Love.
Ah, yes. So
how did you get into recording drums, and what did that look like? How did you go from the electronic kit to the acoustic?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. Back in, I want to say, like, 2021. It was sometime, like, a couple years after the pandemic had started. Josh was working with our friend, and the singer in Mike and the Ride was working with Mike on some musical projects. They had just kind of met on happenstance, and we wanted to sort of do a debut for for Mike, and just kind of showing off his music projects to people. So we organized this show that we did in our friend Daniel's backyard, and that was when I first kind of, like, really started, like, drumming on an acoustic kit, and I found it all the foundations and the patterns and stuff were very similar because it was, the same sort of like, kick drums here, cymbals here, snares here. But it was a little bit different to get adjusted to the sound and the velocity and the physical sensation of like the hi-hats opening, closing, stuff like that. But it was really that first show that kind of really got me into like playing on an acoustic kit. And of course, I had been living in apartments, up through that time, and that's not, if anyone's ever tried to have an acoustic kit in an apartment, that's not something you can do. So, I never got to practice really on an acoustic kit until, like, that show, and then after that show kind of completed, we figured, like, it went pretty well, and Mike and Daniel and another friend of ours, Alex, and we kind of decided, like, hey, let's actually, like, do some work here and like let's actually record some of this stuff and like get it out to people, because Josh had recorded some demos but there wasn't full like instrumentation or anything to it, and once we kind of started taking some of those songs and putting the full instrumentation to it, and I kind of got better with like playing the drums and kind of getting used to like what that felt like, I was just like I was at home at the kit. I felt completely like it was natural to me, and even to this day, like I would have trouble teaching people what I do because I just do it. I don't really think about it too much, So it's hard for me to explain what I do to somebody else, but I just feel like I'm at home on the kit and it just feels like it clicks with me. And yeah, and it's, to be completely honest, kind of going back and looking at, my early days in middle school and high school band, part of me kind of wishes that I had maybe wasn't so short-sighted and I did percussion, because I think I would have actually been a very, very good percussionist, but it was something I wasn't interested in back then. So
we've noticed, after playing here at the studio for about 2 or 3 years, that you've got quite a different variety of styles. I noticed some of the more hardcore things that you mentioned from your 90s alternative days, coming out especially a lot in Mike's set, Ben Orion's set,
mm-hmm.
But then also some of the softer parts in Mike and the Ride, along with the vocals. So how are you able to be so flexible with all the different genres that are thrown at you?
Yeah, and that's actually a very good question, and again, this kind of does harken back to the part that I mentioned about it's difficult for me to sort of explain what I do. A lot of it's just sort of having this really good rhythm intuition and just kind of feeling the beat to the music internally, and just knowing, what different songs call for. And I think part of it was also just like kind of growing up listening to a lot of different genres, starting with like 80s and 90s music, and then in high school I went through like a really heavy rock, borderline metal phase, so that's where I kind of get some of that aggressiveness, a lot of the like Korn and Slipknot and Mudvayne, like the really dirty, heavy stuff, and I think some of it is just listening to enough of different styles of music to where I just kind of know what feels right, what different things call for, and just like having that really internal sense of rhythm that I can't really explain. It's just kind of there, and it's one of my. So I'll open up about this too. I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and sometimes people on the autism spectrum, they have like what we call savant like characteristics, qualities, things that they're just like freakishly good at by nature, and that's one of those things that I think I can just say by nature I'm freakishly good at. It's like my savant quality. I can't even explain it. I didn't train it. It's just there. So.
Yeah, and we've all noticed that from the beginning. I've noticed it firsthand when you had that little tiny drum kit that was a desktop drum kit. It had, what, a crash, a splash, and I mean, it was what, this big? You'd say it was like it wasn't big at all.
It was big enough to fit on a desk, and like the quality of the materials was like plastic, and just like it wasn't even really a real drum kit, but I was still able to take the sounds and like turn them into something that was like awesome.
You played the shit out of that thing.
Exactly.
You played,
yes.
like, I didn't think it was possible to play it as heavy as you played it, but you played it, and I was like, dang, we got to get this guy on a kit.
Exactly.
We got to get this guy on a kit.
Exactly.
So we mentioned your drums, but you play other instruments too these days. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I play drums. I played my alto saxophone, although I haven't played that in years. I play rhythm guitar. I play bass. Really, it all kind of harkens back to that sort of like first foray into music with the saxophone, but then that kind of like bled out into like teaching myself guitar during my college years, and then teaching myself drums during the pandemic, and then teaching myself bass maybe about a year ago or a year and a half ago or so. And yeah, it's just realizing that I just have that natural talent for like anything that I pick up, I can just kind of, play and make something out of. And I think it just goes back to like having a really good ear and just knowing like what sounds good together, what doesn't sound good together, those kinds of things. Yeah, other instruments, definitely would love to explore other percussion opportunities. And it might be kind of cool to get this into when I went back to Australia back in 2012, I brought a didgeridoo back home. That was the one instrument that I couldn't really figure out how to play. Like I kept trying to like put the mouthpiece up to my mouth and like blow and do the weird like.
You have a didgeridoo at home?
Not at my apartment. I think it's at my mom's place, but I do have a didgeridoo somewhere. I just have to learn how to play it because I do not know how to play it.
Yo, we gotta get that thing here. Those things are sweet.
Exactly. Yes. At some point, I'll have to find out who has it, but either my mom has it or my dad has it. But I might even have it. I don't know. I'll have to look at home. But yeah, somewhere, one of those houses, I have a didgeridoo, and I would love to explore, playing that and just adding it. Because that's not that's not an instrument you hear every day,
So, to the audience who doesn't know a lot about drumming, can you tell us what it means to be open-handed versus closed-handed, and how that impacts your playing?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, kind of going back to what I said earlier, I don't have any formal training, so I didn't really develop any sort of like guise of like what's right, what's wrong. So there's probably some bad habits that I picked up on. But essentially with drumming, there's two different kinds of handedness, and you'll have to pardon that I'm holding the mic as I'm demonstrating this. So thank you. So basically with closed drumming, this is what you'll see probably 95% of drummers do, is they will take, if they're a right-handed drummer, they will take the stick, then hold it in their right hand, and then take the other stick, hold it in the left hand, and they'll like cross their arms, and they'll play the hi-hats with their right hands and the snares with their left hands. That's probably, like I said, what you'll see about 95% of people do. It's called close-handed drumming. There are a few open-handed drummers. I think one of my favorites, Carter Beauford from the Dave Matthews Band, is an open-handed drummer. He's absolutely one of my favorites, one of my influences. And what you'll see with that is they will have the same stick position, but instead they'll play, if they're righty, they might play the hi-hat with their left hand and play the snare with their right hand. And that way they're not actually like crossing their arms. And to me, for whatever reason, that just feels much more natural than trying to do the close-handed drumming, because and it's really strange because I consider myself a righty, but in some aspects I consider myself to be ambidextrous, and there's some things I like to do about it with my left hand, and for whatever crazy reason, keeping tempo on the hi-hat is just something I feel much better doing left-handed because it just confuses me less. And so that's my way of playing it, calling out to Carter Beauford and to Ringo Starr and people that played with the the open-handed drumming, and that's like my signature style.
In addition to your drumming, you also have a very, very great voice. So tell us about how you went about finding your voice and how you use that in both the live and the recorded setting.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that was something I never really had any formal training on whatsoever. Way back when I was, in kindergarten, we used to do this thing called like kinder music, where we do, learning about different like musical techniques and voice and stuff like that. And kind of even going into elementary school, we did little like I guess you could say like musicals per se. So I kind of did learn to sing like with a crowd, but singing was not something that ever really interested me, partially because I'm just like, I'll be completely honest, I'm like scared out of my mind to do it in front of people. At first I was scared out of my mind to do it in front of people because I was like, what if people think I'm bad? What if people judge me? This, that, whatever. And as we started working with Mike, I originally kind of started playing the drums, and then once I got comfortable with that, then we decided to give me a mic and like see what I could do. And turns out, singing and drumming is something that I was actually really good at. Not many people. It's a very difficult skill to master, and there's not a whole lot of singing drummers out there. I think Phil Collins is probably one of the biggest ones, but there's quite a few others as well. And again, I think I attribute all that to my mom, because if you've ever heard her sing, she is an absolutely amazing singer, and she has the vocal skills, the vocal chops, and I think genetically I just kind of inherited that. And once I started doing the background vocals, I'm like, we realized like, hey, this is something that sounds good. Like I know, and it's easier for me to sing because, again, that innate sense that I have in me of knowing what sounds good. It's easier for me to just be like, I hear a note, I'm going to match it, I'm going to harmonize with it, I'm going to do this and that. I couldn't tell you what note I'm singing, but I could sing it, and I could tell you it sounds good. And as we started doing some more backing vocals and exploring some of that, I started realizing, like, hey, like, I'm actually, like, that's another thing I'm kind of naturally good at, is just being able to, like, hear pitches and hear notes and, like, either match them or give you something that sounds good with them. And to me, it's easy because if I'm on an instrument, then I have to, like, fumble my fingers and figure out, okay, how do I, like, match that note? But to me, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, okay, this is the note. All I have to do is sing it, and that's it. I don't have to match my fingers. I don't have to put my, hands in such a weird way, to find what that note is that I'm looking for. So yeah, it's been interesting sort of discovering that I'm actually really good at background vocals. And I still remember back to when we did a show on Josh's balcony, and that was sort of the first time that I really kind of had my foray into background vocals. And I remember we did a lot of covers, and we did like a Shaggy song, and I was playing it was like, it wasn't me, and I was playing that song and doing the whole dip little Shaggy voice as I was playing the drums and trying to do the rapping and stuff like that at the same time. And I was like, damn, this is like, it's tricky, but it's something I'm actually pretty good at. And as I kind of continued singing and finding my voice, it's I think gotten better, and it's kind of given me the confidence to not be scared to sing around people because I have a good voice. I just don't, it's that anxiety of like, performance anxiety, so to speak.
So, Colin, we've seen you in quite a few of the videos here at ViewMe Studios. Mm-hmm. Do you plan on showing in any more films, or what are your plans, should I say, in the next year or so? Is there anything you'd like to tell the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start by saying I feel like this is only the beginning. I've done a lot of work with Mike. I've done a lot of work with Ben, and I think this is only the beginning for Ben and Ryan. I think that's going to be something that's you'll see a lot more of over the coming years as we kind of continue to flourish and develop. Right now, I think Ben Orion's going to be the big priority project that I'm kind of working on in the studio, but I am open to drumming for other groups. I am open to doing one-off recordings, being a studio musician. The unsung heroes of the music world, and I feel like they often don't get a lot of credit, but there's been so many good studio musicians, studio drummers out there that drummed on all kinds of biggest hits, and people don't know their names, and I want to change that.
Yeah, well, we'll give them credit today. Colin, thank you for appearing on the studio chat. We hope to see more of you, and any last words?
No, the only other thing I was going to mention that I kind of didn't get a chance to mention a second ago was I'm, in addition to Ben Orion, going to hopefully be starting my own solo project soon. I've been working on some of the production in Ableton. I've got some lyrics written. I've got songs that I've started, kind of sketched out. Some of the stuff is probably going to be a little bit more along the lines of like a Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor kind of thing, because he's another one of my big influences. So I'm hoping to take some of that electronic music and like fuse it with some of the drums and the guitars and stuff like that, and just really come up with something that sounds great. So just keep your eyes out for that, and that will hopefully be another cool project to put out there.
Oh, that was so good. You heard it here, folks. We got Colin Nolan Charter. Thank you, Colin, for coming out today.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate you.